Hi there, and welcome to the Cory Doctorow podcast. I had a great weekend this weekend and saw many of you at the amazing meeting here in London. That's James Randi's annual conference for skeptics and, I guess, free thinkers and whatnot. It was kind of an interesting group of speakers. There's everyone from Richard Dawkins to Graham Lenihan from the IT crowd. Lots of atheists and scientists and just interesting folks. It was actually a very good event. Not really like any I've ever been to before. And I spoke, of course, about copyright and nothing you've probably never heard before. But if they do an MP3 of it, I will put it in the podcast feed so you can hear me say it again. If you are interested in seeing me face-to-face in the flesh, as it were, on November 5th to 7th, I'm coming to Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. My first ever trip to Iowa, I think. And I'm pretty sure. I'll be at Icon, which is this steampunk and science fiction convention there. And then I'm flying straight from there on the Monday following to San Francisco to host the Pioneer Awards in San Francisco for the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So I hope I'll see you at one of those. Those of you who've been following the saga of my office move will be as happy as I am to know that I've signed my lease. And right now, the builders are at my new office, which is next to Hackney Station in Hackney, where the London Hackspace is. I'm just one floor down, and they're painting the floor and putting up tracking for shelves and fixing the door and all kinds of bits and pieces before the movers move me next week. The downside of all of that is that I won't be recording a podcast next week. I will be moving instead. Sorry. What else? Oh, yes, my surgery. So those of you who've been following the podcast also know that my other long-going saga is my stupid hips and my stupid back. And it looks like we're finally going to do something about it. I'm going to have my hip capsule broken and my femur shaved to make more room for the in my hip socket for my femur sometime in January, which means I'm going to be more or less out of commission for quite some time after that. But I hope that I will still be able to podcast without missing too many of these. Okay, well, with that out of the way, let me read you a little bit more from Jury Service. This is the short story / novella that Charlie Stross and I wrote together. First of 3 novellas, the second one being Appeals Court, and the third one being the one we're writing in the new year, which is called Parole Board. And Tor is going to publish all 3 of them in one big package and call it Rapture of the Nerds. And here we go. Hugh doesn't know quite what to expect from the 5th People's Technology Court. A yurt, sandstone, horrible modernist brutalist white-sheathed space-age pile? As it turns out, it's an inflatable building, an outsized bounce house made of metallic fabric and compressed air. The whole thing could be deflated and carted elsewhere on a flatbed truck in a morning, or simply attached to a dirigible and floated to a new spot. A great, safety yellow rubbery gasket the size of a manhole cover sprouts from one side, hooked into power, bandwidth, sewage, and water, armored flex hoses coursing with mod cons. It's shaped like a casino owner's idea of the Parthenon, cartoonish columns and squishy frescoes depicting mankind's dominance over technology. Hugh bounds up the rubbery steps and through the 6-meter doors. A 14-year-old boy with a bad mustache confronts him as he passes into the lobby. "Peaspot," grunts the kid, hefting a curare blower in Hugh's direction. Hugh skids to a stop on the yielding floor. Pardon? "Peaspot," repeats the boy. He's wearing some kind of uniform, yellow semi-disposable coveralls tailored like a potato sack and all abristle with insignia. It looks like the kind of thing that biohazard containment passes out when they quarantine a borough because it's dissolving into brightly colored machine parts. "The People's Revolutionary Technology Court guardsman wishes to see your passport, sirrah," his djinn explains. "Court will be in session in 15 seconds. Hugh rolls up his sleeve and presses his forearm against the grimy passport reader the guardsman has pulled from his waistband. "Ugh, show me the way." A faint glowing trail appears in front of Hugh, snaking down the hallway and up to a battered-looking door. Hugh stumbles up to the door and leans on it. It opens easily, sucking him through with a gust of dusty air, and he staggers into a brightly lit green room with a row of benches stretching round 3 walls. The center of the room is dominated by 2 boxes, a strangely menacing black cube a meter on a side, and a lectern, behind which hunches a somewhat moth-eaten black-robed vulture. Faces turn to watch Hugh as he stumbles to a halt. "You're late!" squawks the vulture. On second thought, Hugh realizes she's not an uplifted avian, but a human being, wizened and twisted by age, her face dominated by a great hatchet of a nose. "Terribly sorry," Hugh pants apologetically. "Won't happen again."
"Better not!"
the judge harumphed consumptively.
"Damn it! I deserve some respect! Horrible children!"
As the judge mumbles on about punctuality and the behavior of the dutiful and obedient juror, which he was led to believe had always been deplorable, but has been in terminal decline since the abolition of capital punishment for contempt of court back in the 18th century. He takes stock of his fellow jurors. For the first time, he has reason to be glad of his biohazard burqa and its ability to completely obscure his snarl of frustration, because he knows at least half of them. The bastard pseudo-random number generators at the People's Magical Libyan Jimahira Embassy must be on the blink, because besides Doc Bjork, whom he kind of expected, the jury service has summoned none other than Sandra Lal, and an ominously familiar guy with a blue forelock, and the irritating, perpetually drunk centenarian boomer from next door but one. There are a couple of native Libyans, but it looks as if the perennially booming Tripolitanian economy has turned jury service evasion into a national sport. Hence the need to import guest jurors. Fuck me. All I need is that turd Adrian to make it a clean sweep, thinks Hugh. He settles on a bench in a rustle of static-charged fabric and waits for the proceedings to begin. The vulture stands up and hunches over the lectern.
"Listen up!"
she rasps in a 40-a-day voice that sounds like she's about due for another pair of lungs.
"I am Dr. Rosa Giuliani. That's a doctor of law, and I have volunteered my service for the next 2 weeks to chair this court, or focus group, or three-ring circus. You are the jury, or potential consumers, or performing animals. Procedurally, the PMLJ has given me total autonomy as long as I conduct this hearing in strict accordance within the bounds of international law as laid down by the Hague Tribunal on Transhuman Manifestations and Magic. Some of you may not fully comprehend what this means. What it means is that you are here to decide whether a reasonable person would consider it safe to unleash Exhibit A on the world. If Exhibit A turns out to be a weapon of planetary destruction, we will probably all die. If Exhibit A turns out to be a widget that brings everlasting happiness to the whole of humanity, we will probably all get to benefit from the consequences. So I will enforce extreme measures against any rat bastard who tries to smuggle a sample out of this room. I will also nail to the wall the hide of anyone who talks about Exhibit A outside of this room, because there are hardware superweapons and there are software superweapons, and we don't know what Exhibit A is yet. For all we know, it's a piece of hardware that looks like a portable shower cubicle and then turns around and installs antique Microsoft crashware in your thalamus. So,
Giuliani subsides in a fit of racking coughs. The person next to Hugh, a young punk of indeterminate or no gender, turns and winks at him, then mutters something incomprehensible in Czech. Cool. I wonder what she'll pay for a new set of Kurdish bags, one careful owner, Hugh's teapot translates. Hugh stares back for a moment, then shrugs. Judge Giuliani gathers herself, and Hugh fiddles idly with the dialect gain on the Jin's translation engine control panel.
"We follow a set procedure. Y'all listen in here. A statement is delivered by the damn fool script kiddies who downloaded the memeplex from the Metasphere and who are applying for custodial rights to it. This describes the prior background to their actions, you reckon? Secondly, a preliminary activation of the device may be conducted in a closed environment. Thirdly, business. You rabble get to talk about it. Fourthly, you split into 2 teams, advocates and prosecution. Yo tax be to convince members of the other team to join you. Shit! Finally, you deliver your majority verdict to me, and I check it for procedural compliance. Then, with any luck, I get to hang the meddling kids. Era zero una questions? Hugh shakes his head, bemused. For some reason, the bloody teapot won't give Judge Giuliani an authentic Neapolitan accent, but Doc Bjork is already waving a hand in the air, eager to please. The judge turns a black gaze on her, one that reminds Hugh of historical documentaries about the Ayatollah Khomeini, but Bjork refuses to wilt. "What,"
rasps Giuliani,
"is it?"
"About this exhibit, is it the box in? And if so, how secure the containment is? I would hate for your worries to depart the abstract and concretize themselves, as it were."
"Ha!"
The judge stalks out from behind her lectern and kicks the box, hard. She must be wearing steel toe caps from the noise it makes. Hugh whimpers faintly, envisaging imminent post-singularity gray goop catalyzed nano-annihilation beyond any hope of resurrection. But the only terrible consequence is that the judge smiles horribly.
It are being safe, she announces. Box are being waste containment vessel left over from second French fast breeder program.
This announcement brings an appreciative nod from a couple of members of the audience. The second French fast breeder program was nothing to do with nuclear reactors and everything to do with mopping up the 8 gigacuries of plutonium the first program scattered all over Normandy. Even Hugh is forced to admit that the alien memeplex is probably safe behind the Magnio line of nanotech containment widgets lining the diamond-reinforced tungsten carbide safe. "So when do we get to see it?" asks Hugh. Judge Giuliani turns her vicious gaze on him.
"Right now!"
she snarls and thumps her fist on the lectern. The lights dim and a multimedia presentation wobbles and firms up on top of her lectern.
"Listen up! Let the following testimony be entered under oath on placeholder goes here to be entered in the court record under this case number. Go ahead, play, damn you!"
The scene is much as Hugh would have imagined it. A couple of pudgy nocturnal hackers holed up in a messy bedroom floored with discarded ready meal packs, air hazy with programmable utility foglets, and they're building a homebrew long baseline radio telescope array by reprogramming their smart wallpaper. They work quietly, exchanging occasional cryptic suggestions about how to improve their rig's resolving power and gain. But the only thing that surprises Hugh is that they're both 3 years old, foreheads swollen before their time with premature brain bridges. A discarded pile of wooden alphabet blocks lies in one corner of the room. A forlorn teddy bear lies on the top bunk with its back to the camera viewpoint.
"Ooh, aren't they cute?" squeaks Sandra. "The one on the left is just like my little brother was before his little accident." "Silence in the court, damn your eyes! What do you think this is, an adoption hearing? Behold, Abdul and Karim Bey. Their father is a waiter and their mother is a member of the Presidential Guard."
Brief clips of a waiter and a woman in green battle dress, carrying an improbably complicated gun, drift to either side of the nursery scene.
"Their parents love them, which is why they paid for the very best prenatal brain box upgrades. With predictable results."
Abdul and Karim are pounding away at their tower of rather goopy-looking foglets. Like all artifacts exposed to small children, it has begun to turn gray and crinkly at the corners. But now they are receiving a signal, loud and clear. They're short on juice, but Karim has the bright idea of eviscerating Teddy and plugging his methanol-powered fuel cell into the Tot's telescope. It briefly extrudes a maser, blots a signal up through the thin roof of their commodity housing, and collapses in exhaustion. The hackers have only 5 minutes or so to wait, in which time Abdul speed reads an illicit download of the satanic verses, while Karim rolls on his back making googly noises as he tries to grab his feet, for they have apparently found the weakly godlike AIs of the metasphere in a receptive mood. As the bitstream comes in, Abdul whacks his twin brother upside the head with a purple velour giraffe. Karim responds by irritably uploading a correctly formatted patent application with the god vomit as an attachment. "I hate smart aleck kids," mumbles the bald guy with the blue forelock, sitting across the room. The judge pretends to ignore him. "These two miscreants are below the contractual age of consent," Hugh hears himself muttering, "so how come their application is being accepted?"
"Here in the PMLJ, as you should well know since you're staying here," the judge croaks, "your civil rights are a function of your ability to demand them. Which is a bit annoying, because Karim demanded the vote 6 months ago, while Abdul is a second lieutenant in the People's Mimetic Self-Defense Forces and a dab hand at creating new meme viruses. In fact, there's some question as to whether we shouldn't actually be dragging him up in front of a military tribunal instead." Judge Giuliani seems to have forgotten to snarl. Her commentary is becoming almost civilized as the presentation for the subpoenaed crib cam fast-forwards to the Terrible Two's attempt to instantiate the bitstream in atoms, using a ripped teddy bear as a containment vessel. "Ah, here, you see it here. The artifact is extremely flexible, but not so flexible that it can gestate in a pseudo-living toy. Abdul's own notes speculate that gestation may be supported in medium-sized dogs, goats, and camels." Over the lectern, the display zooms in on the teddy bear's swollen gut. The bear is jerking spasmodically and ticking like a Tourettic children's TV host, giggling and stuttering nonsensical self-worth affirmations. The gut distends further, and the affirmations become more disjointed, and then a long, sharp blade pokes its way through the pseudo-flesh and flame-retardant fur analog.
They're indications that the artifact floods its host organism with endorphins at metamorphosis time, the judge says, and the rent in the bear's belly widens, and out climbs a shimmering thing. It takes Hugh a moment to understand what he's seeing. The artifact is a tall, metallic stalk, at first coiled like a cobra, but gradually roused to full erectness. Its glistening tip dips down towards the bear.
See how it sutures the exit wound, the judge says, a breath of admiration in her rough voice. So tidy. Jurors, take notes. This is a considerate artifact.
Indeed, the bear's fur has been closed with such cunning that it's almost impossible to see the exit wound. However, something has gone horribly awry inside of it, as it is now shaking harder than ever, shivering off its limbs and then its fur, and then soon its flesh starts breaking away like sections of a tangerine. The artifact stands erect again, bounces experimentally a couple of times, then collapses in a way that Hugh can't make any sense of. He's not alone either. The jurors let out a collective, uncomprehending bleat.
Look closely, jurors, the judge says,
and the scene loops back on itself a couple of times in slow-mo from multiple angles, and then again in wireframe. It makes Hugh's mind hurt. The artifact's stalk bulges in some places, contracts in others, all the while slipping through and around itself. His potmaker's eye tries to no avail to understand what's happening to the topology and volume.
Fucking lovely,
a voice nearby gasps. He recognizes it as Sandra Lawl's. She's always had a thing about trompe-l'oeil solids. Nicest Klein bottle I've ever seen. Klein bottle, of course. Take a Mobius strip and extrude it one more dimension, and you get a vessel with only two dimensions, the inside and the outside, a continuous plane. Glassblower shit. Fucking show-offs. The young brothers are on hands and knees before the artifact now, staring in slack-jawed concentration, drool slipping between their patchworks of baby teeth and down their chin. The cam zooms in on the artifact, and it begins to fluoresce and pulse, as though it were digesting a radioactive hamster. The peristaltic throbbing gives it motion, and it begins to work its way toward the hamper in the corner of the room. It inches its way across the floor, trailed by the crawling brothers, and knocks over the hamper, and begins to burrow through the spilled, reeking linens.
It's scat-tropic, Doc Bjork says.
Yes, the judge says,
and scat-powered. Kareem notes that its waste products are a kind of silt, similar to diatomaceous earth, and equally effective as a roach and beetle powder, as well as water and trace elements.
A fractional dimensional parasitic turd gobbler from outer space, Hugh says. Have I got that right?
That's right, ma'am, says the blue forelock Joe.
And it's pretty, too. I'd just ate one, if only to eliminate the need for a bloody toilet. Quite a boon to your average WHO standard pit latrine, too, I imagine. The voice. He recognizes the voice. Bonnie, the transhumanist she-he that Lal introduced him to at the party where he became patient zero for whatever GM crapola he is carrying. He wonders if the he-she is fucking Lal, who he knows firsthand to be neuter, but that hasn't stopped anyone in a decade. Of course you'd just ate one, Hugh says. Nothing to you if your body is dissolved into toxic tapioca. I imagine you're just about ready to join the Cloud Any road. Sandra casts him a poisonous glare. Fuck you and the goat you rode into town on, she hisses. Who the hell are you anyway? Judge, Doc Bjork says, desperately trying to avoid a mass execution for contempt of court. My co-juror raises an interesting point. What evidence do we have to support Abdul's assertion that the artifact can safely gestate in mammals, or more specifically, primates? The judge grunts irritably.
Only simulations, of course, she says. Were you volunteering?
Doc Bjork sits back hastily.
Are you seated comfortably? Giuliani asks pointedly. Then I shall begin.
She whacks her gavel on the lectern, and the presentation rolls boringly on.
Here, near as we can tell, is the artifact's life cycle.
And fast forward, the space monster digests the twins' nappy hamper, then chows down on their bedding while Abdul, or maybe it's Kareem, hastily jury-rigs an EMP gun out of animatronic toys and an Air Force surplus radar set. The twins back into a corner and wait, wild-eyed, as the thing sprouts a pink exoskeleton lined with throbbing veins, rabbit ears, and a set of 6 baby elephant legs with blue toenails. It squats in the middle of the room, hooting and pinging as it digests a pile of alphabet blocks. Kareem, or maybe it's Abdul, improvises a blue goo attack using the room full of utility fog, but the ad hoc nanoweaponry just slimes off the space monster like so much detergent.
At this point, the manifestation estivated, announces the judge.
Duh, what's that mean? Asks one of the other jurors, one who Hugh doesn't know, possibly a nationalist from the Neander Valley.
It went to sleep, explains Doc Bjork. Isn't that right, Judge?
Damn straight. The judge whacks her gavel again. But if I get any more lip out of you, Sunshine, I'll have you flogged. This is my trial, clear? Bjork opens her mouth, closes it, then nods. Well, says Judge Giuliani with some satisfaction, that's that then. This thing seems to have fallen deeply asleep. Just in case it wakes up, the PMLJ Neighborhood Sanitation Committee have packed a Class 4 nanohazard containment vessel, which I'm standing on right now, and shipped it over here. We are going to try a directed revival after lunch, with full precautions. Then I'll have a think about it. You Dan meddling baboons can enter my verdict, and we'll wrap up in time for tea. Court will adjourn. Make sure you're all back here in 3 hours' time. Or else. In case the message isn't sufficiently clear, the bench Hugh is perched on humps up in an uncomfortable ridge, forcing him to stand. The vulture storms out the back of the courtroom in a flurry of black robes, leaving a pool of affronted jurors milling about a lectern containing a sleeping puddle of reified god vomit. All right, everyone, announces Doc Bjork, clapping her hands together. How about we go and find the refectory in this place? I could murder a baklava. Hugh slouches off toward the entrance in a black humor, teapot clanking on his hip. This isn't going quite the way he'd imagined, and he'll be damned before he'll share a refectory table with a sanctimonious Swedish Girl Scout, much less Sandra and her gender-bending and disturbingly attractive friend. Someone is quite clearly doing this in order to get under his skin, and he is deeply pissed off. On the other hand, it's a long time since breakfast, and there must be somewhere that serves a decent tofu burger in Tripoli. Mustn't there? All right, talk to you in 2 weeks. You've been listening to the Cory Doctorow podcast, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial Share-alike US 3.0, or as Woody Guthrie put it in another context, this song is copyrighted in the US under seal of copyright 154085 for a period of 28 years, and anyone caught singing it without our permission will be a mighty good friend of ourn, because we don't give a darn. Publish it, write it, sing it, swing to it, yodel it, we wrote it, that's all we wanted to do. Many thanks to John Taylor Williams for mastering. That's Ryneck Studio, WRYNECK Studio @gmail.com. John Taylor Williams is a full-time self-employed audio engineer, producer, composer, and sound designer. In his free time, he makes beer, jewelry, odd musical instruments, and furniture. He likes to meditate, to read, and to cook. Talk to you next week.